Yes, space, always the final frontier, but never here on the Blackcast YouTube channel. There are so many frontiers yet to explore, as always. I am Christian Blatt. We are going to be discussing Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 2, Disengage. And I am joined by the one, the only, patent pending, copyrights reserved, Jason Blair. Hello, sir.
Hello. So was disengage sort of like a dare? Like they want the viewer to disengage after this episode with
Well, they're daring you to, but
right.
by the way, Dominicus Saxon, very excited to see you. Dominicus Saxon, very familiar with Jason from many Blackcast and Star Trek, and I
Hello,
don't know. I
Dominicus.
feel like I've done Star Wars with you too.
Yeah.
It's whatever. So and there's been some conversation in the chat, and I was saying a moment ago that even if this season were to derail starting next week, it's already an improvement on season 2. It actually doesn't matter what happens over the next 2 months. It's already better. It's just that it already can't be worse. Now, Jason, you weren't with us last week when we discussed the season premiere, so I want to give you a moment to really sum up the first episode, and then we'll dive into the second.
Well, as far as how you feel about the season, I think was the season 1. Did they drop the first 2 episodes, or am I just imagining that? I think the last time we might have been on to talk about Picard, it's been like 2 episodes in each season, and I think the problem is every time we're at the 2 episode mark, I'm always like, this is pretty good. I mean, season 1 of Picard, the first 2 episodes, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. This Elnor kid will be cool. And, we were like very promising. And then the pacing all fell apart and we saw how terrible it was. So I'm just always worried about having my hopes high after 2 episodes.
I agree for season 1, but season 2, the stink was there right away. You were just like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
It's like some of the best Star Trek stories involve time travel, but you just felt like they were using it because, like, I don't know, should we go back in time? I guess we can save money. And boy, did they try to save money. I think they saved it for this season. Like, that was the deal, You bring in season 2 at half budget, we'll give you what you're asking for season 3.
Right.
But I think that there have been a few people that I've heard from, and I've told everybody, you really don't need to have watched the first 2 seasons. You just have to have a familiarity and a love of the Next Generation characters. And, there's going to be, there's a lot of Raffi in these episodes, which we're going to have to really shine a light on. And I can't wait till I talk to my friend Flobo Boyce, who is still the world's #1 Raffi fan, number 1 Raffi defender, protector, apologist. But he wouldn't consider it being an apologist because he's like, I got nothing to apologize for.
Well, to go back to your first question on the first episode, I already knew I was going to like it better when it first started out with a CBS Studios production, and it was in the blue 80s font. And I was
That's a great point.
Okay, look, I mean, we haven't even seen an actual shot from the show yet, just the opening, trademark. And it's like, it's done in, the TNG blue. So I was like, okay, we're upping the actual nostalgia. We're actually letting viewers know that we know there was a whole series that you used to love. And then it just kept going, because then all of a sudden the music was definitely more, they had the First Contact theme going into the Jerry Goldsmith, Next Generation, I guess the motion picture theme, whatever you want to call it, which is what we all like. And so just a lot of those subtle details, you're like, okay, they're actually letting us know, we know why you're here. You're not here because of the first 2 seasons of this show. You're here because of the 7 seasons of the Next Generation, and maybe
and the first really the first movie. I was actually going to say the first 2 movies, and then I'm like, wait, Insurrection's the second one, isn't it?
No. The first 2, Generations, and then
I don't count that.
First Contact.
First Contact is great.
Right. Yeah.
First Contact kept the pacing of every other Star Trek movie being a good one.
Right.
And Insurrection did not dissuade that. But then Nemesis was like, well, what if we make 2 bad ones in a row? And what do you think about that?
Right.
Yeah. And then you know what? But then the J.J. Abrams kind of reset it because the first and third ones are at least passable. And then the second one is like, Benedict Cumberbatch is Khan? Really? Yeah.
Right.
Our pal David Weiss, Salmon, who will be on when he's back from his walkabout in Florida. We'll do this show with him somewhere down the road. More Easter eggs than the Duggar family brunch. Thank you, sir. That's what we have.
It's good to know Sal's on this because I think the last time we did a podcast together was right after the Eagles won the Super Bowl like 5 years ago. And
oh my gosh!
And Sal told me that Andrew Luck would not be back, and I told him that was ridiculous. And then like a year later, it happened. So Sal, you were right about that. So
yeah, anyway. Exactly the not so luck of the not so Irish. Well, I think that one of the things when we talked last week, I spoke with my friend Angelica about episode 1. There was so much like care of the characters in the story, but also definitely nods to us because it starts even before what you're talking about in the 25th century, and there we look at the Titan and Admiral on the bridge. So it's all right out of the motion picture. And it's like, you know, I've got a new appreciation for the motion picture in the last few years, seeing it again on the big screen. I know that still most people have issues with it, but that's the stuff that like feels great to kind of remember from that. And and I think that we got that, and, you know, just setting us up with a story. And I have highlighted this a number of times on this show and on our Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania reviews. But to kick off that episode, you have Gates McFadden, you have Beverly Crusher with like a laser rifle, and the only way you can describe what she's doing is kicking ass. And minor spoiler for Ant-Man, it starts off, Michelle Pfeiffer is in the quantum realm, and yes, she's kicking ass, and you're like, great. There is no reason that...
Which is good, because when I saw that, I was like, was there a single episode or movie of The Next Generation where Beverly Crusher was like engaged in a firefight? Like, I was trying to think, like, this might be the first time I've actually seen her kicking ass.
I'm going to assume if she ever was, it was defensively. You know, like somebody shot at everyone, you know, on an away mission. Right. But nothing comes to mind.
Because I remember when the Borg were trying to get into the medical bay, and she basically like activates the EMH doctor. But I don't think I ever saw her like, you know, do that. So it was nice. It was out of character, you know, but I thought it was good to finally see that she's now this, you know, grizzled veteran, and she kind of gets her moment in the action. Yeah. Aspect.
Well, let's talk about, you know, in terms of episode 2, we got to meet him in episode 1. I want the very divisive lightning rod character. What are your views on the one, the only Thomas J. Kelly, the most divisive character in all of Star Trek fandom, joining us now from the Thomas J. Kelly show, the Tom Kelly Show studios in Manhattan, New York. Tom, welcome.
I apologize for being late, guys. I apologize.
I'm so glad that you thought to put pants on for the live stream because you just stood up.
What's funny is I realized I just was doing an audition and changing clothes, and I went, oh my God, I'm 10 minutes late. And so I'm going to just keep this mid outfit if that's okay.
That's absolutely fine. I'm the only one dressed for the occasion, but that's usually the case. You know what? Roz JD in the chat reminds me of something, that Beverly does Tai Chi with Deanna Troi and also drinks chai tea. But I do remember them, like, you know, there'd be, I think we know why those scenes were in there, of them doing lots of stretching, you know, long before yoga was the lots of Troy and Crusher stretching in the holodeck, and we're like, okay, I get this. You know, I was like 14, and I'm like, yeah, I might have to watch this episode again when it reruns next Sunday. You know, I might have to check this one out. But we're talking.
I remember the
about
spandex was shiny too, very shiny.
very
spandex.
shiny. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that meant you didn't have to wash it nearly as often, for all of that. So I want to, Tom, I'll let you talk about some big picture stuff, but I was about to turn to one of the most divisive characters so far introduced in Star Trek, and I'm going to tell you right now, kind of like him. He's growing on me. Let's talk about Captain Shaw. Jason, I was about to ask you your thoughts on Captain Shaw. Start with when we meet him last week and then when we get to see him this episode.
Right. It's always one of those situations where if there's sort of a non-enterprise captain on the show, or somebody who's not the core captain, they're always supposed to be kind of wimpy. I mean, you think of Captain Harriman at the beginning of Generations. Literally acted like he'd never been on a bridge
Captain
before.
Cameron from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Ferris Bueller, right? Yeah. I mean, it's like, how would this guy be a captain? So at first you don't like him because he's sort of, well, you guys go gallivanting and off, and I do it by the book, and I'm kind of like, he's sort of realistic in a way. Like, I mean, that's
what I was thinking more with the second episode. I'm like, I bet more Starfleet captains are like Captain Shaw than Jim Kirk,
because two guys,
Picard.
Two guys just show up and say, we want you to go to the whole opposite end of the quadrant as what your orders are. And then it's like, I was on the show, it's like, well, that's what my orders are. Like, they never question it. And he's just like, no, because I'm going to check with Starfleet on this, and they're going to tell me that you're lying to me. And then, I mean, that's what you would do in real life, right?
Specifically, they asked him to go out of Federation space, and he's like, no, I don't think you can make me do that, which is kind of interesting.
Which that was another thing I will say.
Ahead, Jason.
Sorry, it bugged me a little bit in that he just told them, no, I'm not going to do it. But then when they were outside of Federation space, and then the bad ship, whatever the lady's called, I forget, wanted the Jack to get turned over, and the captain's like, I'm going to do it, and then Picard is like, no, you're not. That's an order. I'm like, oh, so now he's following orders? Like,
I had that thought, like, after the hour.
Is he bound by Picard's order or not? It was,
Which I think you can convince me he's not bound. Excuse me, he's not bound to Riker's orders, because Riker's just another captain, and then that can be the discretion. I'm sure there's some regulation there, but Picard is an admiral, and he's also Jean-Luc Picard, or a reasonable facsimile of Jean-Luc Picard. He's an android Jean-Luc Picard, but still. And I think that the most believable, likable moment is actually at the end of the episode, and we're talking about all the spoilers, when Shaw's like, why? And Picard's like, because he's my son. And then that's the moment where Shaw's like, all right, I mean, I can't stand in the way. It's like I get it, that's your thing. So Tom, let's talk Captain Shaw, and we can talk bigger other stuff, but let's zero in on Captain Shaw to start.
Well, first of all, the whole thing is Patrick Stewart fan fiction. That's how I describe the whole show. Is and my problem with Shaw is he's remembering Patrick Stewart's version of Captain Picard from the last 20 years. All of the Shaw lines would have worked if it were Jim Kirk trying to sneak on the ship. Like, Picard crashed his ship into things once or twice. It was like, I mean, really, he wasn't known. Picard was known for being a statesman. Jim Kirk was known for being sloppy. I have a problem with everything on that show is set for plot, including Shaw. He's a jerk when the scene needs a jerk, and he's smart when he needs a smart person. You're telling me you slept when an admiral came on the ship. The admiral's doing a surprise inspection, but you don't have to follow his orders. The whole thing is just badly written if you're looking at it as a 1 hour arc, never mind a 12-hour season. Actually, and that's the right way to say it. So I love the actor. The actor looks like a captain. He is performing well for each scene. And I would argue Shaw is a great character in a TikTok.
Well, in general, everyone I've talked to doesn't like him, and I'm like, yes, he is not a likable character. I think he is a fairly well written character from the characterization standpoint. There are decisions made for plot, I said last week when we did our show, like, so he goes and takes a nap, like, and
Yeah, I mean,
and by the way, no one on that ship is loyal enough to their captain to like, I just thought you might want to know we're not going where we're supposed to. Remember how you told Annika not to go here? Well, she took us there. Should we stop her?
Well, I'm gonna debate you on that one, or not debate you, but that's a trope that goes back to the original series, third episode, the Menagerie, when Spock kept going to the bridge and changing the ship towards Talos 4. When it was the Rescue Pike episode, Kirk said, "No, we're not going to rescue Pike. We have things to do."
Obviously, Tom, that's episode 19 of the original series. But let's move on.
I'm gonna fight you on that one. Really?
Okay. Because the cage is the pilot.
It is. It happened late in the season because they were running out of money. So,
so they had to repurpose the footage from the pilot.
But
the footage and the footage that they didn't use in the Menagerie was considered lost for a long time. They only had black and white footage for this stuff that they didn't use in the Menagerie. And then years later, they found it and then they restored the whole thing. And I, of course, had VHS copies of both. But anyway.
By the way, notice how I derailed this conversation so badly. I took us literally from the latest episode of Picard to the original pilot. I apologize.
To the original pilot.
Yeah. But, it was funny when you asked about the most divisive character. And I wasn't sure who you were going to ask. I kind of thought you'd think Shaw, but my first inclination was you were probably just going to ask about Jack because.
Oh yeah, we'll get to him. Yeah.
I mean, divisive.
But to your point, I'm following Terry Metalis on Twitter,
Terry Metalis. Yes, I follow him too.
And he is answering a lot of Shaw hate mail.
And by the way, let's point out, Dominicus Saxa points out that actor's name is Todd Stashwick. I've never liked any of Todd Stashwick's characters. Terry Metalis worked with him on his great 12 Monkeys series, which holds up way better than the movie does. So yeah, it's like if you're a fan of the Walking Dead, that actor who plays Negan, you're not supposed to like him, but that doesn't mean he's not good. The performance isn't good. I'm reserving judgment. I feel like Shaw is somebody that, maybe he sacrifices himself. I kind of hope that they don't go that route, but I think he's gonna come up big in a way where he needs to. I mean, he does actually try to, Annika shames him into rescuing two legends, so that showed that he's not as rigid as we thought. But the fact that she doesn't get relieved of duty until, past the halfway point of episode 2, and then she's really still on duty later in the episode,
Yeah, I mean, like, you're not having security escort her off the bridge. Yeah. There's no brig time. Again, it's and she's marching around while they're invaded, and then she earned her job back. Like,
also,
she violated orders for being.
When you talk about brig time, they don't pat you down before they put you in the brig. That's come on.
The Jack
not anymore.
Thing, yeah.
No, not in the 25th century. I'm sure there
were.
There were
responsibility to tell me what is powering this brig,
right?
Yeah. The woke generation's gone to the 25th century.
Well, that's like the idea on like cop shows when they say, if you're an undercover police officer and I ask if you're a police officer, you have to tell me. So, no, they don't, because because it's like they don't want to get killed, so they can lie to you. So yeah, this guy really doesn't need to answer him. But I appreciate the conversation on Shaw, and everybody can continue to talk about him. Tom, I have been incredibly critical of this streaming era of Star Trek, and the person I know who's way more critical is you. So I have enjoyed these first 2 episodes. We'll admit that they're flawed, but from the get-go, I already feel like, they're telling a better story than Picard has. But how are you feeling 2 episodes in, Tom?
I want to like it. I mean, it's very easy to just go on and poop on it. And I think maybe my standards are too high. But if I'm being a human being for a minute, as a kid who grew up with Star Trek, who found friends because of Star Trek, who used to make summer camp fan fiction of Star Trek, and frankly is very defined by his love of Star Trek and Star Trek: The Next Generation, it's total shit. It really is total crap. I wish it wasn't. It's inconsistent. I mean, it's nice to see the gang together, and even then, though, the footage is too dark. It's
The
not
Dark
Star Trek.
The Dark Trek is just too much, and I'll tell you where it runs off the rails for me is every time I start to like it and I start settling in, they cut to the Raffi plot. It's like I have half of the show that I like, and then it's like, oh, you're starting to like it. Boom, let's cut to Raffi now, and we'll go super dark. And it's like, I just keep thinking it's that stupid scene in Attack of the Clones where the guy comes up to Obi-Wan and goes, you want some death sticks? And it's like that same street for all those movies. And I'm like, this is not Star Trek. What's very odd to me is CBS All Access did this to me. Every time I watch Picard, it always wants to kick me right over to Voyager Caretaker, season 1, episode 1. And for some reason, I just let it run last night and it kicked into Caretaker. And look, we all have problems with Voyager, but it was funny because it was like 1995 dark and gritty where Tom Paris was, he was a prisoner and the Maquis was like fight. And it's supposed to be, and it's so like bright and optimistic compared to even the brightest scene in Picard is a million times darker. And it's like, what happened to Star Trek? Why is it all dark all the time?
Well, go ahead, Tom.
No, and I think, listen, I've expressed the thought on the podcast before. I thoroughly enjoyed Picard episode 1. It was, all right, this is a statesman. You're
talking about season 1, episode 1?
Picard season 1, episode 1. Okay, he's on his vineyard. He's retired from something. But I really think, Picard was always better than us. As a human being, he was what we aspired to be. And I think this effort to make him flawed has really screwed up the show and the series. And I think a lot of that is the actors. If you watch any of the trailer footage, none of them want to be there. They all want a paycheck. Have we discussed on air my Brent Spiner feud?
I don't know that we did on this show. I think that might have been specifically on the Black Cast. Tom had I have screenshots for it somewhere. Todd had a little bit of a back and forth with Brent Spiner. Do you want to set that up at all?
I was a bit of a jerk. You can find it later, but I basically saw a tweet that said Brent Spiner in Picard season 3. Yay! You were so awful in 2. You're really coming back again. And I think I just sent a tweet and actually tagged Spiner in it and said, "Please stop." And it sums. This is my point with Brent Spiner. Is he doesn't want to wear the Data makeup. He doesn't want to be Data, but he does want a paycheck. And he essentially said that in a tweet to me. And that's all of them. Picard doesn't want to wear his uniform. Who else? We got Data doesn't want to be Data anymore. Geordi, LeVar Burton doesn't want to wear the eye things anymore. None of them want to be there.
We're like 20 years into him not wearing the visor, so that's
okay. But he's not even wearing the contacts. I mean, and this is my point: is I don't think it just feels like they all want to work. They all know that people love them from this, and it doesn't feel like Trek. Even going crazy for a minute, I would love to watch a podcast with the lawyers from Paramount that discuss the making of Picard and everything in the digital universe. Because if you look at it, they're trying to get us nostalgic about the Starship Titan. It was in 3. It wasn't even on air in Star Trek Nemesis. Why haven't we seen the Enterprise E? It just, none of it feels right.
Well, I think that they're probably saving that. I mean, it was like, think about how on Discovery we meet Captain Pike and we're like, yeah, but can we see the Enterprise? And they never actually show us the inside. Just to have this little walk down memory lane from May 6th of last year.
Okay.
Good God, Brent Spiner, stop killing my childhood and your reputation. Please sit this one out. Enough. And there's more. Tom, I noticed on your page that you like to work. So do I.
I think that's him admitting he's there for the paycheck.
Yeah. Let's see.
Okay,
I thought that he said more. He said more.
Like a jerk. Go to that other reply about me talking about his appearances on Night Court. Go up a little bit. Go up a little bit.
I didn't
or down a bit.
Wait, bit down.
Enough. Go down. Down.
All right.
Down there. That one. Stop. Let me say this as a fan. Read that.
Oh wait, but I like this part too. I thought it says you were a comedian. Why doesn't it say critic? So yeah. But all right. So let me say this as a fan. Star Trek Picard tarnishes your great body of work. I am a fan since Night Court. Star Trek Picard writers have not found a Soong Data storyline that works. Can we start a GoFundMe for you to get another role or sit this one out? No,
are you enough of a fan to have owned his CD of Old Yellow Eyes is Back? Because I actually bought that.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me that you bought that, Jason.
and yet again, Blackcast fans, Star Trek Picard After Show fans, Jason Blair one-ups me again.
Look, he one-ups all of us because, Jason, who did you go to UCLA with?
Cirroc Lofton.
Jake Sisko.
Jake Sisko from Deep Space Nine, yes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so,
yeah.
yeah. But Tom worked with Guinan for a long time. So you see, there's levels.
And honestly, listen, so for those of you who are new to me, I worked as the warm-up comedian at The View for many, many years with Whoopi Goldberg, who is even more fantastic than you can imagine to work with. And she has introduced me to Leonard Nimoy. She introduced me to Patrick Stewart. I found my own way to George Takei and Nichelle Nichols. But she appreciates me for loving Star Trek. That said, I really want to say meaner stuff about Picard, but she's friends with these guys, and you don't want to be mean to your friend's friends. Like I kind of stopped. Yeah. Like, I mean, yeah. And that said, in the privacy of this small circle of friends, am I wrong for being this against Picard? Does anyone else want more?
I'm sort of, I think it's
funny.
not
after this season. I want this season to go where it's going, but I'm not disappointed that season 3 is the final. And what were you going to say, Jason?
I'm weird being in the middle on things. I think, Christian, you seem to like this more than I do. Tom, you seem to hate it way more than I do.
Yeah.
I think that it's, so far, I think it's promising. Like I said, I'm just still worried because I liked Picard season 1 after 2 episodes. I'm starting to worry about pacing. Where is it going? You know, we still really don't know what any kind of plot is. We saw the Jack Crusher, you know, what he was going to be from literally, you know, an episode and a half ago.
Well,
so then when
and just to interject on that, I appreciated Riker being all of us. I'm like, what? Really? We're not going to talk about it? You know, I mean, because that's me. I'm like,
and that's one thing I will say in the first season of Picard I really liked is I feel bad for the Riker character because Will Frakes is just such a likable guy. Jonathan Frakes is such a likable guy.
Agreed.
He's got a really infectious smile. You just want to be friends with him. Riker
and we all want Fact or Fiction to come back. I think
right. But he never has anything to do because the original idea that Roddenberry had was that Picard would be the the ambassador diplomacy guy. Riker would be the action Kirk guy. But then Picard, Patrick Stewart wanted to do the action. Well, all that means is it's the same thing now. Riker is largely just standing by as the sidekick who doesn't need to be there, except that he's likable and you want him to sort of like take a lead
I don't think you remember that he has a pizza oven. Okay, so he has a pizza oven.
He has a pizza oven.
Yeah,
and he
what
says
were you
red
gonna say,
alert.
Tom?
If I could tag on to one thing Jason just said, which is Jonathan Frakes and the character of Riker strikes me as the only person who really just wants to be there.
Yeah.
Everyone else seems like a hostage. Maybe Worf. Worf looked like Worf. Michael Dorn.
I mean, Worf has been trying to get that Captain Worf show off the ground for like 20 plus years. So Worf is probably glad to finally get to get the prosthetics back on.
I think Dorn and Frakes are like the two that really enjoy doing it. And
I mean, even 7 of 9, which okay. So back to my point about the lawyers. Who came? Like, I feel like somebody said, "Well, we still have Jerry Ryan on a very expensive holding contract because she did some sort of a pilot." for Paramount Plus, CBS All Access, whatever the heck it was.
Right.
Like I feel like they said, we have Jerry Ryan, so you have to use her so we can write down the cost of this. And other than that, I mean, for real, and again, you used a line about, and I don't want to make the remark sexist, but you know, 7 of 9 was, and even Jerry Ryan will say this, she was a character at least added for the fanboys. You know, she was sexy. She wore the little cat suit, blah, blah, blah.
Look, there's a reason that both she and Deanna Troi were dressed differently than everyone else on the show they were on, you know?
Yes. With that said, has anybody, man, woman, or child, ever dreamed of a Captain 7 of 9? Not me. And I'm a fan and I like the character on Voyager. I mean, I would love to see Janeway back. I would love to see B'Elanna Torres as, actually, this is the right way to say it so I don't sound sexist. I am craving B'Elanna Torres as much as 7 of 9. I always thought she was overused on Voyager, which other actors from Voyager will say, well, she was a pretty actress and overshadowed everybody. But the character wasn't that amazing. It had, and even still, again, everything, it has potential, and then it drops.
Yeah, no, I think there's something to be said, and you can bring back basically everybody except Neelix and Tess. I will skip whatever that is. I think I've mentioned I once saw the actor who played Neelix at a party, and I decided I can't go over to him and tell him how much I hated his character. I'm just going to leave him alone.
I'm going to make 2 concessions right now. One, Neelix isn't that awful a character in the whole body of Star Trek.
Raffi.
I like Raffi, but actually, I frankly don't hate the Raffi plotline. I don't.
This is better than what she's had before, but then they bring in like, hey, remember your kid, remember your son that no one cared about?
This show would have been a lot better if Worf hadn't missed Raffi's head with his bat left and accidentally hit the Ferengi. Then I'd be like, yes, Worf. And then he
Worf
just takes over and investigates. And so
the voice of the fans. Yeah.
Can I make one joke that can I make one joke that I've wanted to make for a month?
Please do.
Okay. It's about Kes from Voyager. I'm going to argue that is the worst character on Star Trek, and we've all been ignoring the elephant in the room on her. Can you still hear me? I lost an ear pod. I'm passionate. Okay. So I'm going. Kes is
Seth
the worst.
MacFarlane says it's Tuvix. That's his least favorite character.
Okay.
So not Tuvok. Who's Tuvix?
Tuvix was the couple episodes where there was a transporter accident where Neelix and Tuvok became the same person.
Okay. Yes,
and then a few episodes later, they separated them out. So anyway.
I'm going to argue we all should say Kes is the worst one ever. She is 9 years old and was dating a 60-year-old man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was the character. She was from a planet where people aged quickly. She was 9 years old, and she was dating a 50-year-old man, and we all accepted it because she looked 18.
Actually, she wasn't.
How many times have you had a buddy?
She wasn't 9 because I rewatched the episode last night, and the Ocampa only lived to be 9, so she was actually like 3.
6? Oh,
yeah.
She's 3.
Okay.
So, Tom, your point is made even better. Yeah.
My point is made even better. Thank you, Jason Blair. Your attempt at one-upping me again has failed. Okay.
But isn't it really like her birthday's on February 29th? You know, so it's like she only ages every 4 years, but really, you know, she is an adult. You know, but anyway, let's not let's not get Voyager under the microscope, which is mostly my fault, because I keep mentioning the characters I don't like. We are talking about Raffi. I think her story could be interesting, but I feel like what Jason was saying, when they try to do dark, seedy underbelly in Star Trek, it usually doesn't work. It's something that Star Wars was able to figure out by starting off with gangsters and dealing, you know, just that universe looks more lived in and dirty, and Star Trek usually looks bright and clean. So when you go like, and you know, they've done this in a number of shows. They've done it more on Picard than anything else. The worst was when Picard had the eye patch on and he was trying to be undercover in season 1, but I digress a little. So I feel like it's not Michelle Hurd being a bad actress. I just think it's a character that I don't know why we were given. and why she's still around. I'm glad she doesn't refer to Jean-Luc Picard as JL as often as she did. That was particularly grating. However, we've done away with most of the Picard supporting cast.
Right.
Does
Does anyone care about her I'm a recovering addict arc at all?
We would have needed to know the character while she was going through it. And
right.
It's, you need to earn that. And I'm like, I've never cared about her from the first time we met her,
I'm gonna concede I actually like Raffi better than Picard on this show.
Oh, well.
Listen, the season 2 also made me hate the show more. The whole you're right. I don't think
season 2 made me hate Star Trek. It was good that they followed it up with Strange New Worlds, which I thought was much better. It was, and that I needed to have my faith restored, and I hope that this series can restore my faith in Picard. We have talked about another divisive character, Jack Crusher. Obviously, at the end of episode 1, when he says she's my mother, you're like, okay. I mean, this doesn't look like the actor that they had play young Picard back, in the flashback episode, in like the academy when he didn't get stabbed in the heart or whatever, but he looks enough like that actor where you're like, okay, clearly this is his kid. Like,
I would love if this whole plot of this season is Will Wheaton and the Traveler are basically out to get this guy so he can get half the inheritance that he thought he was. He thought he was getting all of it, but he's only getting half the Crusher inheritance. So.
See, I was talking about that last week when we talked about episode 1. I was talking about Will Wheaton and Wesley, and then I remembered they brought Wesley in at the end of season 2 to take the robot girl away, and I was like, "Oh no, they already used Wesley." Yuck. Yeah.
But come on, he can come back. I mean, he's a traveler. He can.
I know.
And you think Will Wheaton's saying no? I mean, he's got that god awful.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Brent Spiner's not saying no, Will Wheaton's not saying no.
I mean, I got to say, our after show of Picard is way better than Will Wheaton's, and he's got CBS money behind him.
He does have CBS.
Well,
money,
to his credit, he has to toe the company line, and he has to say whatever CBS. The show has to be great on his after show.
Right, but to your point, you worked with Whoopi, Whoopi, you didn't want to make fun of her friends. These are people he grew up around. He's not going to badmouth the show. And he probably loves seeing his friends from when he was a kid and all these, he probably looks up to everyone on that show, including Tasha Yar, even Denise Crosby, he looks up to, So I think that, it's a very biased perspective.
Okay.
And I will, of course, point out whenever Will Wheaton comes up, the moment in George Takei's documentary where he runs into him at a convention and George looks at him and says, "You've gained weight." And Brad has to pull George aside, is like, "You can't say that. I think you hurt his feelings." Really? Well, he has. But anyway.
And no one will cancel Takei.
They tried to come for him, but it's Sulu cannot be broken.
I'm going to make a point I've made on your shows before. And I need to figure out the name of this writer because I cite this point a lot. There was a retrospective review of the 20th or 30th anniversary of Star Trek V, which is now no longer the worst Star Trek piece of crap ever. It is actually in the top half for me, if you rank hours of Star Trek.
Of all the 850 hours.
If you rank 800 hours of Star Trek, I'm going to argue Star Trek V is fine. It's not good. It's fine.
It's not good.
But the theory is loving Star Trek means accepting half of it is crap, and maybe 1/3 is brilliant, and then or 25% is brilliant, and another 25% is somewhere in between. And I'm going to argue the problem with serialized storytelling is you can't pull away from something crappy. Strange New Worlds is not perfect. Strange New Worlds has many of the same problems that Picard has, but the problem with Picard is because it's a 12-episode arc or 8-episode arc, whatever it is this year. Frankly, I'm praying for 4. because it's a serialized arc, you can't walk away from bad decisions. Like I really don't like on Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Really, it's Khan's great great granddaughter is the security officer,
Yeah, I
and
don't
she
love that.
hasn't changed her last name. We have a couple of Hitlers on Long Island. They have changed their name 60 years ago. Like it's just little things. But if it only happens for one episode, you could kind of ignore it and move on. With Star Trek Picard, we're really dealing with Jean-Luc Picard's possible bastard son, who is 20 years old, but is played by a 35-year-old actor. What is this? Beverly Hills 90210, 1993?
Well, yeah, Ian Ziering was unavailable to play his 20-year-old son, so they had to get this guy.
I get sick
go
of
ahead,
the.
Jason.
I get sick of the. He's a badass, but he's got a heart of gold. I mean, they tried to kind of do that with Book on Discovery, and then then he kind of became soft and cuddly, and I don't know. I just get. That's why when you were asking about Shaw being a polarizing character, I thought you might ask about Jack Crusher, because it's kind of like, all right, we get it. You're a badass. You don't get patted down when you get into the brig. You got all these fake names, whatever.
Yeah, but I'm with Shaw in that part, the first part of the episode. I'm like, yeah, turn him over.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
I would have done it.
Why are you risking 500 members of your crew outside of Federation space, where the alternative is possibly that everybody's going to die? And it's like, and let's give credit to the character of Jack Crusher. He's trying to beam himself over to give him, he's trying to turn himself in. So I thought I thought at first he was trying to get away, but I'm like, you know what? I think that was a good turn. He could, so that is a character that could redeem itself. Probably won't, but there's something to it there. And yeah, he's like, I'm only a bad guy because I'm doing good things. So great, he's Robin Hood. That's awesome.
Right.
What were you gonna say, Tom?
No, but the whole thing of the whole Beverly plot. We haven't talked in 20 years. Great. It's just forced. It's all.
They don't have money in the future, so she doesn't need to get the
Picard's
the child support.
Right. She doesn't have a piece of Picard's pension.
Right.
Well, I mean, she served long enough in Starfleet that I'm sure that and she still has a job, so she's fine. But I think that we're incrementally getting to see some of our friends. I thought the reveal of Worf was good, because I wasn't sure who was on the other end of that. I was like, it doesn't make any sense for it to be Elnor. I just felt like this show would do that, though, because they wanted to try and keep these characters in here. So the fact that was Worf, I'm like, all right, that's fun. That moment was great. Look, anytime a Ferengi gets his head cut off is going to be good television. How many Ferengi have we met? And we kind of like Quark, and we put up with Nog because it's mean to say that you want to, a child character to get sucked out of an airlock. But, for the most part, Ferengi have, they're very grating. And this one was perfect for that. But I think that storyline ended the way he needed to, with Worf just coming in and chopping off heads. I'm like, that's the Worf we wanted to see.
That's my hope, is that this whole Raffi plot just, like, literally she just starts tagging along with Worf, and Worf just takes the lead and handles it all, and we can deal with Worf, with Raffi just maybe, chiming in once or twice an episode. But I also think the reveal with Worf sets up a little bit of a pacing issue, because I think everybody else that we have yet to see on the image of the cast there, who is not yet there, they're all going to want that same reveal. So it'll be the very end of episode 3 that, there's Geordi, and it'll be the very end of episode 4 that there's Deanna, and we're going to be 5 or 6 episodes in before we've even got all the cast, because they're all going to want to do their cliffhanger reveal at the last, and then it'll be like every season of Picard, where you're 2 episodes until the season's wrapping up and you're just starting, so
yeah. Deanna we've already gotten to see in this series, and I think that they did a decent job, sort of like, Riker's like, yeah, they could use with me getting out of the house, probably because he's been making pizzas and not flying in space. When if Jean-Luc is getting itchy and he's like 150, odds are that Will Riker is not enjoying, becoming Papa John, So I think that we'll get to see everyone, and I guess Brent Spiner's going to be Lore. Is the impression we're getting. I don't know if he's also going to be somebody else, because the picture that I've got up right now, it doesn't really look like Lore. I don't actually know what that is.
Did they give up on B9?
Oh,
they did. Oh,
maybe.
geez, have you watched Star Trek Picard? What the hell's the matter with you?
Oh, that's right. They disassembled him, and he's at the Daystrom Institute or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, but they tried using his data to launch a program. But then Data's soul did work on another planet. Geez, aren't you following this? And it's so badly written, Blair, and I'm even following that one.
I forgot all that, but as soon as you said it, I'm like,
exactly.
oh yeah, that was more stuff I was dissatisfied with.
But and I guess this is the whole thing, is it's just so convoluted. It's so forgettable. And at least if it's an episodic show, it's okay if it's forgettable. Like when it's a series show for an arc, like, listen, Star Trek Picard season 1, I didn't love it. But you know what? It was, you saw that scene at the end. Well, now I have a motley crew now, whatever it is, a motley bunch. I remember you used the word motley, and it looked like that he was going to go fly around with Rios on little adventures. And then somebody said, nah, nobody wants that. Let's go back in time to 1986. And then, you know what? I didn't want 12 episodes of that. I would have loved season 2 of Picard as 1 episode. And I'll tell you, the best thing that Picard has done in the whole run is the Worf reveal. It was the only thing that has been semi-true to character in the 2 seasons, 2 episodes so far. I remember reading the Star Trek The Next Generation Bible for the show, and the description of Worf was he gets his laugh speaking in short sentences. Like things like "nice planet," like whatever it is, it would be concise punchlines. And there he was. He chopped some heads off. He was violent, and then he said, "I told you to disengage," and that was it. And you know what? He didn't have to go. He didn't have to go into, I don't like prune juice anymore. I'm now vegan, whatever.
I mean, he's obviously got, his most famous was the assimilate this when he.
And also I am not a merry man, So,
great line.
There's a way to use that. And it'll be interesting to see, where his character's at and, what he's up to. I think that's probably the most exciting thing that we've been given so far. I agree with Tom. That reveal was great. I was surprised. And, in the first episode, I actually thought it was Seven that was messaging her, but then we saw more Seven in that episode. And I'm like, hey, that doesn't make sense. And I actually wasn't sure. I just, I think that, it'll all come together. It'll all start to make sense. And hopefully we get a great big spacefaring Star Trek Next Generation style adventure. And even if everybody doesn't want to be there, I want them to make me feel like I want to be there. And, I think the fact that when we get to the last episode of this, I think you'll have sort of a feeling that everybody's realizing that, their time has come to an end, and I think, look, they've left us in a situation where the Titan's trying to run away from Amanda Plummer's ship, the Shrike.
Okay, so I have a problem with the Titan too. First of all, the Titan, I think I drew the Titan when I was 12 years old. Look, it has 6 impulse engines. That must be fast. And they made it look so badass. And then 10 seconds later, there's a much bigger ship. It's the whole thing is drawn the plot. You're telling me
if I had drawn it when I was 12, there would be giant boobs on either side of it, but I see what you're saying.
They're there, the nacelles.
That's the thing. When they showed it in Space Dock, it really didn't look like that big of a ship. And it was like, they said it's Neo Constitution class, which to me would be a little smaller. And I'm like, but it's named the Titan. If it's the Titan, don't you use that name on the really big ship? So it just sounds like a condom brand to me, in all honesty. So that, and I think the fact that Shaw tries to play everything so safe just reinforces that Titan Man. Yeah. Also, the bad guy ship, it just reminds me of what's his name? Eric Bana's ship in the J.J. Abrams one. It has that same arms reaching out to sort of engulf you thing. So,
listen, I'm going to sound very old-fashioned on this. I don't like any of the effects. We already discussed that the set design is too dark. The second thing I don't like is the visual effects are cartoonish. You know, like the space dock scenes were fine. They were based on real models. But I'm not emotionally attached to anything. And yeah, it just doesn't feel like it's real.
So I understand what you're saying. I feel like when it threw the other ship, I thought it looked okay. But the point you're making is why, like 20 minutes in, a hot take here from 30 years ago, I tapped out of Babylon 5 immediately because none of the effects looked like it was part of the same show. It looked like cartoons. I think if they were to have, taken that, if they were to do modern effects in that show, it might actually be the watchable, beloved show that some people think. I'm just like, I can't. Yeah. I couldn't watch that show. So I do feel that sometimes the effects, and you'll see this in Marvel movies, you'll see this in some Star Wars stuff. Sometimes the effects are like, oh, they probably needed another 6 months for that one shot, and they just didn't have it. And that is disappointing. It hasn't done that to me yet in this show, but guaranteed that now that you put it in my head, I'm going to see something in episode 3, and I'm like,
it'll look more like Sequest DSV.
with Captain Roy Scheider replaced by Captain Michael Ironside. Yes, please.
Listen, my argument about She-Hulk, I know this is like 2 brands over now and not even the same company, but She-Hulk stunk because they did a CGI She-Hulk and they broke away from the character of, like, She-Hulk in the comics loved being She-Hulk. This She-Hulk didn't, because it was cheaper to have the human actress than the CGI model. And I think even now, it's the same thing with this thing. Is the Picard, they went cheap to do 20th century or 21st century special effects.
Well, yeah, I was saying that earlier, that the sort of poverty budget of season 2 was to pay for season 3, and season 1 I felt like also looked good. And as critical as you can be on Discovery, when it started, I was blown away by the level of the effects, and we haven't gotten that through every season of Discovery. We haven't gotten that through all of the streaming shows, and it's like, you're not on a network schedule, whatever the time is. I know that there's not infinite money, especially these days, but take the time, make it look good, and I think we'll all be run over. Jason, do you have to run, or do we have?
I can say, since we moved it up, I got a few minutes, and I think Tom doesn't realize he's on a podcast with the only 2 people who actually really liked She-Hulk. So
that's true. We did. Yeah.
But I'll do a different podcast about She-Hulk with you.
We'll talk about She-Hulk. We've talked about it. Yeah.
But if I can ask you guys 2 questions, because I think you're going to see Paramount Plus milk this for something that will come after this. I have lost track of the trades. Is there still a Section 31 TV show on the table?
I'm glad you asked. I know someone, let's just say, that was in the writer's room for the Section 31 show. And I think they broke stories. They might have been ready to write scripts. Then it was shut down. And I think it's been reassembled with a different group of creators, because the idea of having a Star Trek vehicle where you have Michelle Yeoh signed to it, let's put it this way: she wins an Oscar, Section 31 will be on by January. But it's still in development, but it got sidelined because whatever the original vision was for it, whoever the higher ups are.
I mean, I'll throw this idea out to the 2 of you. Section 31 starring Michelle Yeoh and Michael Dorn. Are you into that?
I mean, don't try to make it make sense.
Who's into that is Michael Dorn. Michael
Dorn's going to say yes.
Yes.
What if
and Brent Snyder as
I was just about to say, what if it's like a baseball trade where, to get the player you really want, you also have to take Brent Spiner
Brent
as someone
Spiner
other
as
than
Sammy Soong. It'll be, and
so
By the way, Sammy
ahead,
Soong did the old Yellow Eyes album.
he did as well. So, Jason, before I let you go, you're being cautiously optimistic. Seems like you're enjoying it. Maybe I'm letting myself enjoy it because of how much I disliked season 2. What are your hopes for season 3? Whether you think realistically it's what you get or not, what are your hopes for season 3?
My main hopes are that they don't spend half the season getting the cast together. Just they're already on the promotional material. Just have everybody assembled by the next season, by the next episode, and actually give us like a plot, that we can follow instead of literally being 8 episodes in and we're back here talking in April or May being like, do we still know where we're going? Do we still know what the objective is? If they can do that, I think we'll be fine. I don't even need the plot to be a blow me away thing. It just don't spend the entire season on setup.
How about this? Jordy's daughter sent an encoded SOS to her dad, and he shows up with all the other characters like 5 minutes in next week, and they save them.
Yes.
And even if it doesn't make sense, everybody who's there, even Dwight Schultz is on the, it's fine.
If they bring in Dwight Schultz as a special guest star as a surprise, then I don't care what the rest of the season is. I'll just
Barkley.
Yeah, let's get Barkley. Exactly.
Right.
Let's get O'Brien on there. Just get everybody on Jordy's ship, and it's like, all right, we're here to help.
I heard weird. There were early rumors that whatever was going on was going to have to do with the emissary, and there was a possible Avery Brooks tie-in here. I think that's never happening, but I've heard rumors about that.
Yeah, I mean, if you saw that thing that Shatner did where he talked to all the captains, I don't know that Avery Brooks is getting brought in to apart from perhaps a cameo. Jason, I agree with you. Let's get to what we want, which is seeing everybody. I hope that, obviously getting Worf at the end of the second episode is encouraging, and I hope we see that. And I hope that we're able to have you join us as the season goes along. You're not on Twitter. You're officially off Twitter.
No,
you used to just tweet like 3 times a year when you would do shows with me, but now you've actually deleted your Twitter. So I got nowhere to send people to keep in touch with you, do I?
Well, I'm on Facebook.
Okay.
If anybody still uses that, nobody does anymore. I'm not really that active on social media, but
that's all right.
If you need any IP work, I'm at Smith, Gambrell and Russell. That's my
There
firm.
you go. And so what that sounds like, Tom, is that Jason is yielding his plugs so that you get extra plugs when wind things down.
I'm glad. Thank you, Jason, because I would normally promote my podcast, Tom Kelly Show, which is completely the opposite of whatever we just talked about today. But I would like to promote my Star Trek Captain Shaw fan fiction, which I'm working on right now.
Excellent.
Where he takes a nap through all the stuff, like, the Battle of Wolf 359. He's like, I'm going to take a nap.
Yeah, he goes back in time to First Contact because he always wanted to nap in orbit over that historic moment. Just somebody with more Photoshop skills than me should really just CGI classic Star Trek episodes and put Shaw napping in the background. Jason, I'll let you run. I appreciate you taking the time. Tom and I will wind things down after another 2.5 hours. No, we'll just do a couple more minutes and we'll wind things down. But Jason, thank you.
Thanks.
As always.
Bye, Jason.
I look
Good
forward
to
talking to you again in the future, as they say. Then there were 2. I don't know if you can answer this question, but it made me laugh when David Weiss asked, how can you warm up an audience that's already in a ferocious sweat from hot flashes? You don't have to answer that, Tom. I
enjoyed my work and would like to, much like Brent Spiner, I'd like to work again.
I'd like to keep working. Yeah, I know exactly. Look, you were able to talk to the godfather of audience warm up, Joey Cola, who definitely had to face that same exact question.
Actually, if I can actually tell you a real thing, David, just while you're trolling me, I actually genuinely loved the View audience, and all joking aside, the reason why I'm late, somebody found me and I on my website. I'll tell you privately what the show is later, but I've been
Yeah.
asked to play a daytime TV warm up on a streaming show.
Awesome.
But anyway, I basically was recording right before this, doing a self tape. There's a camera right
Nice.
behind me if you see that.
Yeah, I see it.
But basically, you're not a great actor when you're having trouble playing yourself.
Right, exactly.
Like suddenly I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's like Michael Jackson entering the Michael Jackson lookalike contest and actually not winning. David Weiss Salmon, I agree with the criticism of the lighting, who was the designer Stevie Wonder, and then this is where he makes his money. Worf cut off more heads than Ellen DeGeneres after a Starbucks run. So yeah, look, yeah. I am forever, even in the midst of season 2 of Picard, I was hopeful that it would get better. It never did, but I was always hopeful that it would. And if you remember, they dropped the trailer for season 3 in the middle of season 2 because they were like, yeah, we get it. We know it's not good, but I promise you, we feel a lot better about season 3. I mean, this is the quickest follow-up season, I think, for any of these streaming shows, because there's other shows out there, but they're like, we got to get Picard 3 on the air quickly. Not whatever it is, season 5 or 6 of Discovery, not the next Strange New Worlds. So I'm hopeful, but I've been burned by this before. Like Jason says, I'm gonna hope that I get some good stories coming forward. But we'll see where it goes.
Settle for, and you know what? I'm gonna retell the story to you, mainly just to appeal to angry David Weiss.
You don't even know him, and yet you know that he is always angry. So that's good.
Oh, I'm reading some of these comments. I have a picture of him in my mind. That said, I remember watching Star Trek Insurrection. I actually went with a non-Star Trek friend to see it in the theater. And there's the moment where the joystick pops up out of the bridge floor and Riker is now using the manual steering column. And I felt like, all right, I had to pause and I said, you know what, Tom, this is just a TV show. Let go. And I have problems with that because I think Star Trek at times and at its best was a well-woven together universe. And the problem with creating so much content upon content upon content in a universe is at a certain point, it's just a TV show again. And I think my hope for Picard is that I get a few great 30-second scenes that will look good when I'm scrolling on the FYP on TikTok.
Right. Well, there you go. And, look, as someone who does not appreciate the William Shatner Get a Life sketch from SNL, there is the takeaway from there where he says it's just a TV show. He actually tries to appeal.
Did he use that line?
Yeah, he says it was a TV show. It was a job I did. It was fun, but it's like it's a TV show. And yes, it's a TV show, a bunch of movies and books and comics and video games. There's all that. But at the end of the day, look, if it's entertaining, you can really push a lot of the questions aside. If you tell a good story and I feel like I'm having fun, which there were times in these 2 episodes I felt like I was having fun. A legitimate surprise of Worf coming in at the end of that scene. I'm like, that earned some goodwill with me. So I hope we get more of that. And
and again, I think if you treat it like well-financed fan fiction, and to anybody crazy enough to watch this stuff, us doing an independent after show, I challenge you to go find the Star Trek Phase 2 fan fiction. Arguably better than anything in the Paramount universe. At 1960s special effects, they built the 1960s Star Trek set, the Enterprise Bridge set in Ticonderoga, New York, and which is available for you guys to go see on a tour. If you go to StarTrekSetTour.com, you can get tickets and see where the place is.
You posted a video because you went, right?
I did an ABC News piece / video blog from the location.
Right.
And it was if you're a fan for 50 years, it's amazing. And what they're not legally allowed to do any more work on the set.
Right.
But the work that exists, it's true to the spirit of Star Trek, which was, remember, part of what made Star Trek great was it was creativity within a very low budget. And I think that was always the difference between Star Trek and Star Wars was the story and the plot and the acting had to carry really bad special effects. I actually miss the stock special effects, the stock beauty shots, because they were well done and they just reran the hell out of it.
That's why there would be so much exposition in like Picard's ready room where everyone's just sitting and talking about what they're going to do, because it's like, we can't really show you what we want to do. We can't show you the things we want to try, but we'll have like room for like 2 effects in this episode. And I mean, look, you get a lot better character development in that way. I mean, I think it's it's not going too far out on a limb to say that Star Trek characters tend to be, much better defined than a lot of genre characters where there is more action per second,
I would rather see a reused beauty shot over and over again that is well done than cheap beauty shots or no beauty shots at a ship at all.
That's fair. I can agree with that. Well, we'll see what we get in the future. And of course, the Tom Kelly Show can be found wherever you find your shows, including on YouTube. And please subscribe to the Blackcast YouTube channel. Next week, I will be unveiling, on March 2nd, you will be able to get my 75-minute interview with Dana Carvey as part of our 10th anniversary of the Blackcast. I've already recorded it, so I know it's happening this time. And if you want to look back in the meantime, you can find my 500th episode with John Lovitz. We did 2 hours.
Can I ask you, as a Blackcast fan, and as a guy who has known your love of Saturday Night Live, how did that feel at that moment, getting to meet Dana Carvey and do a whole hour with him on your show?
It was great. And the fact that he said yes was... it made me feel good. I've known him for a long time because I would set him up to talk to Dennis Miller, and he would want to talk like the day before an appearance and try out bits. And I would be on the phone with him an hour sometimes. And he's like running through characters just for me. Like, we weren't recording it. It was just on my cell phone, like in my living room. And, and I would just sort of like throw ideas in and stuff and try and help him, so that once I got past that point, and my name drop is that I have a few of those memories of like long phone calls with Norm Macdonald, long phone calls with Gary Shandling. It was like 2 hours, and
really,
and it's just like, they're just talking to me. Don't they know that I'm just me, that they don't need to take their time and talk to me? And Dana Carvey was very generous with his time. And I think I asked him about a few things that he hadn't thought about. He did this movie called Moving with Richard Pryor, and I hadn't heard him talk about it. Somebody had reminded me to ask him about that. A lot of SNL talk. Look, Tom and I are big nerds for Star Trek, but we're also big nerds for SNL. I think people will appreciate that. And then for the later next week, probably later in March, for if you're also just a sci-fi nerd / geek, for the Geekscape Network, I'm doing a special. I'm interviewing Kenneth Johnson, who is the creator of the miniseries that is celebrating 40 years this year. So I'm going to talk to him, and I'm very excited about that because that was probably, when I was like 8. I loved that show, and the miniseries is now 40 years old. So plenty of content that you'll be able to find. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ, and I will always post links. I will shamelessly post links to everything that I'm doing, including those 2 shows. Tom, are you about to?
I gotta get going. I gotta get going. But my friend, time spent on this podcast is always time well spent. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom Kelly. Thank you, Jason Blair. And to everyone in the chat, live long and prosper.